Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Ariza Dunn.
Can't wait.
The Jets' feel-good spring comes crashing to a halt with the start of OTAs. Now, I'm just kidding, of course, but we have learned over the last couple of weeks that not all of the Jets are super happy right now. We're going to get into that. Aaron Rodgers also got hurt on Tuesday, only with the Jets here. I'm Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt and Ariza Dunn. Welcome into the Can't Wait podcast. A lot to get to that really just, we were like, well, Aaron's going to practice, like we should do a pod the day after. And then kind of all this other stuff has come up in the meantime. So we're going to get to Aaron Rodgers. It's minor injury that doesn't seem like a big deal at all. We're going to talk about Mekhi Becton. We're also going to talk about Quinnen Williams, his contract situation, and the news today that the Jets are hosting Matt Ariza, the punter formerly drafted by the Bills. We'll get into that as well. Zach, Marissa, how are you guys doing?
Good. I just want to wish you guys a happy belated National Iced Coffee Day. I believe it was yesterday.
Oh, was it? Oh,
very important. Very important holiday in my life. That
National holiday for Zach. Yeah.
That I just discovered existed yesterday.
How did you celebrate?
By drinking iced coffee, of course.
All day. One extra.
Oh yeah. I was just drinking it the entire day. But yeah, how you guys doing? It's beautiful outside, and we're inside doing a podcast.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. Marissa, how are you?
I've been good. Baby countdown. I can't wait to have a nice coffee. I've not had any.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
I've not had any coffee.
Should we do should we have listeners predict the date?
Yeah, I know it's getting close. My due date is July.
They've been pretty
2nd.
good with the over-unders on our times. We got on the over today.
Except I'm hoping it's not an over.
Yeah, we don't want an over. Yeah, we want you right on time. Yeah.
Yes, right on time or like a little before. After 37 weeks or 38 weeks.
Yeah, my sister-in-law. Not to get too sidetracked here, but this is the tradition of Can't Wait. My sister-in-law, when they were having their second baby, I was like staying at their house to watch my nephew. Like I was just staying with them until it was going to happen. It was during the pandemic, so I didn't have to like drive up to Giants practice as much. She kept going later and later. It was like a week and a half later. And then she finally, of course, has the baby like the day I'm like up covering a Giants game. So they have a friend come watch my nephew. Like, but yeah, she was like miserable. It was like a week and a half, 2 weeks after her due date or something.
Yeah, so I mean, doing well. Just trying to get as prepared as possible. I know any parents listening to this podcast will know there's really like only so much you can really prepare for. So, but yeah, very excited. So
we're excited for you.
Yeah, thanks.
And we're excited for Tim's haircut. I've seen some people complimenting. I think it deserves
already. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
People that are longtime viewers and listeners of the Can't Wait podcast remember this haircut because before the pandemic, this was actually how it was if you're watching on YouTube. But then when you get into a pandemic and you don't go outside much,
what's the point?
I don't want to get
you have a baby.
You guys should have seen. You guys should have seen my beard.
You
guys should have seen my beard during the pandemic. It was gnarly. Like you guys would be shocked at how long it was.
Yeah.
So basically, I made the decision last week. You know what? It's time. It's been 3 years. It's time to return to normalcy. So
there you go.
So here we go. Yeah.
Speaking of normalcy,
never thought
Aaron Rodgers.
Speaking of normalcy, yeah. Nothing normal about the Jets.
So get your predictions into the chat on Marissa.
Yes.
July 2nd, the due date. Let us know when you think. That's
the over-under, I guess. Yeah.
And with that. Let's move on to these New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers said yesterday, because he did speak to the media after, I guess he got a little bit of a workout in before the slight calf injury, but nobody got to see that part of it. But he said it's been a dream month so far. Zach, has it been a dream month for you?
I mean, a dream month in the sense that I've been able to relax a little bit. Like that, for me, that's a dream. After the chaos of this offseason or lack of chaos where we were stressing about stuff happening, like it's been nice to relax a little bit. Of course, then, Quinnen stuff and Mekhi stuff happens. But I want to say, I think the first Aaron Rodgers practice with the media present could not have gone any differently. It was the most perfect Jets debut for him. There's so much, probably the most media that maybe ever has shown up to Florham Park for a practice or this time of the year, at least. Like it was like insane. There was no space anywhere. The parking was nuts. There was
I was
so
going
many
to say,
cameras.
did you have to park in like an auxiliary lot or anything, or is there
no, just like really far back? So the Jets media parking, which is very compelling content for these people. It's like a long
Very
road,
far, right?
People enjoy this stuff.
Usually we're able to park like up front, but this time there was like both sides are both completely occupied. So you had to go all the way down and U-turn and park. Anyway, it's a small media room where we do our press conferences. So when Saleh did hit, it was packed. When CJ Uzomah came after practice for his, he like looked at the crowd and was like, God damn. Even Rodgers of all people was like the cameras, there was a lot of cameras in there and they were very loud, and there was a lot of
not in Green Bay anymore.
Yeah. At one point he looked up and he like got distracted by like how many people were in there. So it was like, it was, I told people and they were surprised by this, but I said it was like this most days on the Eagles beat, because it like maybe not like to that degree, but like pretty close. Like there would be most days where there'd be that many cameras and reporters and
you were covering like Carson Wentz.
And I was covering the Carson Wentz era. Yeah.
And I covered not to date myself, but I covered the McNabb era. And
right.
And but the auditorium in Philly, like it's a legit auditorium.
Exactly, which is helpful.
It's big.
But
it's also dark and easy to fall asleep in. But
yes. But so all of that as the context, and then we get to practice and we don't see him throw a single ball. Like it was like quintessential Jets. Like I think there's no need to overreact. Like it wound up being minor. I wasn't really worried about it being significant even in the moment, because you saw him. So he did like the warm-ups in the beginning, and then he went into the building briefly, came back out without his helmet, was kind of talking to the strength coach for a while, and then it was clear he wasn't practicing anymore, but he still walked onto the practice field. He was observing the quarterbacks during position drills. He was observing the team during team drills. He was talking to some guys. Like if it was significant or serious, I don't think he would have been out there. So, and he said he wasn't worried. It was a strained calf, I believe is what he said. He's 39 years old. I'm guessing those things happen sometimes. I guess that's the
getting
risk
out of bed sometimes.
Yeah, getting out of bed. And he's not in it's not like game shape time of the year necessarily. So, and he said he took a vet day just out of precaution. So, nothing to worry about. But I even saw the New York Post like back page like headline like over dramatize it, not shockingly, but it was kind of like a same old Jets thing. There was like a photo of Jets fans with bags on their head and stuff. Like it was like way over the top. But it's like it's May 24th, and we're already doing that, which is just like a great preview for Rodgers with the Jets and for all of us to, this is how some things are never going to change. It's going to be weird at all times here.
Yeah.
It is. So one of the things that I think it was Uzomah that talked about it was that even though he wasn't in that second part of practice, that Rodgers in general has been talking a lot and motivating a lot. And I think he said at one point the message from him was basically like, get your shit together, right? So that it's cool that, because we had talked long ago and we've talked about a lot, would he skip this stuff, right, and just show up in training camp? And he's not skipping this stuff, although now he has an excuse to miss a little bit, I guess. And he's clearly very engaged.
Yeah, I think he hadn't been to OTAs to this degree since 2019, which is a pretty long time. But yeah, the CJ Uzomah thing, like there's multiple things. CJ talked about it a bit. Rodgers talked about it a bit. One thing is that Rodgers has been very active in meetings. Like he like kind of takes control of a lot of the offensive meetings, where if something's happening, he like stops it to like say something or have a conversation with these guys, because he wants everybody like to get things in there. Like he talks like a coach in a lot of ways. And he's basically a co-offensive coordinator, honestly, I would say, with Hackett. I think they have that kind of rapport where they're kind of working together to build this thing. But yeah, so he's pretty active in the meetings with like stopping things, conversation. If Hackett says something, Rodgers feels comfortable enough to like say, hey, let's talk about that for a second, kind of thing. Which he even said, he's like, I didn't get the vibe that that's kind of how it's been here, is what he said in his press conference. And then with the calling them out thing, he said, and Uzomah said that the offense like wasn't having a great practice, and Rodgers said the thing was attention to detail and ball security. He didn't think that both of those were things that they were doing very well. So he pulled everybody aside. He's like, we can't do this shit. And he told a story about Ryan Grant, who's a former Packers running back, who he said, at the end of every run in practice, he would run to the end zone no matter what. And then Jordy Nelson, when he was a rookie, Jordy Nelson saw him doing that. So Jordy Nelson started doing the same thing. And Rodgers' message to all the guys was, if you want to stand out, especially for guys fighting for a roster spot, you should finish every play, because then a coach is going to call you out in a positive way in the film room. And then all of a sudden everybody's going to start doing that. And So he just made a really good point about like the details matter. And I think the details is, if you look at last season in particular, there was a lot of like small things that would happen in those losses, especially early in the season. As the season got later and they started losing by a little bit more, maybe not as much, but like the details were definitely an issue last year, especially on offense. So it's a good message, especially this time of the year, and you hope it gets through to them. And it's been interesting. I think we're in the honeymoon phase. I think we all have to remind ourselves that I think, every story is going to be a positive one right now. There's not going to be anything bad coming out of camp. Everybody's loving Rodgers. Like DJ Reed was as smiley as I've seen him, and he's already a happy guy. And he, the first question I asked DJ Reed at his press conference was like, what's the vibe been around the building, both getting Rodgers and like everything you guys have done this offseason? And he's like, it's lit. Everybody comes to work happy. And somebody followed up, because I kind of like left it open to not only being about Rodgers. And somebody's like, can like one person really have that big of an impact? He's like, yeah, no, Aaron Rodgers has that. Like they're being pretty open about, everybody's starstruck, it seems like, which I'm sure will wear off at some point. Like I said, honeymoon phase. The Jets fans should enjoy this right now, because you're going to be mad at some point when the season starts. So be happy that everybody's happy right now. Well, not everybody's happy, which we're going to get into. But you're on mute, Tim.
Yeah.
At some point, you don't want your teammates to be starstruck. You want them to just be like, okay, this is our quarterback, right? Not this is the future Hall of Fame,
exactly,
Aaron Rodgers. So hopefully over the next few weeks they get to that point. Everybody praising Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, somewhere in that locker room, Zach Wilson is hanging out and going about his business, and he's a guy who thinks that about Aaron Rodgers. Right? He said it for a long time how much he loves Aaron Rodgers. When the Jets practiced in Green Bay last summer, that was a big deal. So Wilson became QB1 yesterday for practice. 12 of 14, I guess, made some nice throws. This has never been the issue with Zach, like these types of practices, but he's getting reps, I guess, right now, thanks to Rodgers' little tweak.
Yeah, I like live tweeting this stuff just because, fans aren't getting at it. Like there's some reporters who get all, hoity-toity about like tweeting stuff that's happening in an OTA practice. I say, who cares? Like fans aren't there, and I'm trying to provide them with like what I'm seeing. And so, Zach Wilson had a good day. It was 7-on-7, half the starting defense wasn't there, and there was no contact and, no pads and all that stuff. So take it with a grain of salt, but he looked good. He had a bad throw to Garrett Wilson that like hit off Garrett Wilson's helmet and was nearly picked off. And I think that was one of only 2 incompletions he had that I saw all day. He had a really good throw to Garrett Wilson later, where it was tight coverage. DJ Reed was on Garrett Wilson. DJ Reed even talked after practice about like how impressive of a play it was from Zach. He like improvised, like Garrett kind of changed his route on the fly because he saw an opening, and Zach saw that and hit Garrett Wilson, and who dove and caught it. It was pretty impressive. And then he had another great throw in the middle of the field to Irv Charles. And someone else, I think Andy Vasquez from NJ.com pointed out there's a play where he went through his progressions, which, was something that was an issue in games last year. And he like landed on like his last target on one of the plays in the red zone, I believe. These are all positive things. And, I don't think you should take anything away from it necessarily, but at the very least, it's, he didn't have a bad day, which is positive. And I think, if Zach Wilson can keep doing this throughout the summer, build some confidence going into training camp, he's going to get a lot of reps in the preseason, I think, which is going to be really where we can judge where Zach is and how much being around Rodgers and all the criticism he's gotten and everybody moving on from him has motivated him. I don't think there's anything to necessarily take away from Wilson playing well, other than that he played well. And, you take what you can get this time of the year. These are only tidbits that we're able to provide people. So I was impressed. Doesn't mean anything, but I was.
Listening to you talk about Aaron Rodgers in the quarterback room and kind of helping to build the offense the way he is and taking command of that room. I feel like all that stuff too can't hurt, like Zach Wilson being in there, hearing this stuff, hearing it from the quarterback and not just the coaching staff. Because let's be honest, one of the things there where this team failed Zach Wilson was having that leadership beyond just the offensive coordinator. They tried to do it. Obviously, we've talked about it. Tragically did not work out, but like it's still a fact that happened, and maybe this helps him in that sense too.
Yeah, he's going to be on an interesting career trajectory where he's getting the time learning from a veteran that he should have to start his career, honestly. Like, I think a lot of people talk about how these quarterbacks are rushed in now more than ever. And Aaron Rodgers is maybe the best example of all time of a guy who waited and learned a lot. Like, if you ask him, he has a lot of stories about what he learned sitting behind Brett Favre for 3 years. And the things he studied. And, he's a different mind than most people. But, Patrick Mahomes sitting behind Alex Smith, a lot of it's about the situation you go into. Packers and Chiefs are both situations that were good teams. The Jets weren't a good team when Zach Wilson arrived, which is another reason why maybe he shouldn't have played. I think the Jets have acknowledged, and I think they know that they really messed it up with him when he came into the league. That roster was not good around him that first year. It was a pretty brutal roster. I think Aaron Rodgers, even after their joint practice, Zach Wilson's rookie year, I think he even was quoted at some point saying Zach's gonna have some trouble behind that offensive line. And Rodgers has talked, I think, publicly about how quarterbacks should wait. And so like I was saying, so Zach Wilson is having this a weird timeline thing where he started right away, which he shouldn't have, had the NFL experience, which didn't go well, but he had the experience. And now he's going to take a step back, learn from a great quarterback. And then you hope that helps him. But, the timeline is going to be weird for the Jets because by the time Wilson might be ready to play, they're going to have to make a decision on his 5th-year option. It's maybe he should have been sitting this whole time, and then this was the year that he would have started playing or something like that. But here we are, and maybe this year will be good for him if he doesn't have to get thrown into the fire with Rodgers getting hurt or whatever. This could be a very valuable lesson for Wilson, whether it's when he's with the Jets a year from now or if he's with another team. But I'm very curious to see how Zach handles it. By all accounts, it's been positive so far. We haven't talked to him yet. I can't imagine we will for a little while. But yeah, this is make or break for his career. So I think he has to really take what he can from being behind him.
Before we get to the off the field stuff, this came in the chat from Brendan. Maybe way too early for this, Zach, but has anybody else kind of stood out on the field through these light practices?
Well, no, just because I would say Jeremy Rucker was getting a lot of targets yesterday, so I guess that's something new. I would say, and this is going to get in, bump against what we're going to talk about at some point. Mekhi Becton's had one of the best off seasons in terms of.
Well, let's transition there.
Yeah.
That's because that's where we're going next. So, we can go there next. Let's shift the rundown a little.
Yeah,
bit.
we can shift it. I think Mekhi's had a great offseason because he's done a good job of publicizing it, which helps obviously. But he's in great shape. He looks like the photos are legit. He looks like he's in great shape. There was a story in Newsday, which we're going to get into. But I think he's down to something like 340, 345 when he weighed himself at the beginning of the year. I think he was 370. And I think when he was injured either last year or the year before, he was up to 400. This is a guy that has obviously struggled with his weight. And a year ago, he wasn't practicing with the Jets, and it was a big issue. And the Jets, I think they were pretty unhappy with him last year. And you remember that he went to that press conference with a shirt about being a bust, and then he wound up getting hurt again. We're going to get into some of why he thinks he got hurt again, but yeah, I think he's had a really good offseason in terms of getting in shape. And I've said this on here over and over again. I view him as an X factor because he has the most talent of any of their offensive linemen. And if he's healthy and, stays healthy and stays in shape, he could really change the ceiling of that offensive line, because then you have AV2, who when healthy is a Pro Bowl caliber guy. Dwayne Brown's still a solid player when he's healthy. Laken Tomlinson should be better in his second year here. And I think Joe Tippmann will be an upgrade over McGovern at center if he wins that job. So I think it could be a very good offensive line if Mekhi Becton is firing on all cylinders.
All right. So as far as the Newsday story, Becton came out and basically blamed the Jets for the injury, saying the reason he got hurt was because he was moved over to the right side, and it was against his will, so to him, that he wanted to be playing on the left side. I don't think it's not a great look, Zach. Look at Elijah Vera Tucker, who was moved all over the line, right? And granted, he got hurt too, but
that was his arm though.
Yeah, exactly. It's the NFL, man. It may be decided that you're not going to play left tackle. You got to deal with it. You can't blame the team because they tried to move you to a position where you would be in that situation, a bigger help to the team, and then complain that that's why you got hurt.
Yeah, it's on one hand, I get he's highly motivated to prove that he's a left tackle. Like that was where this all started. Was he had a tweet where he said, "I am a left tackle," and Robert Saleh responded to it. And then the story came out in Newsday, which was a really good story by Bob Glauber, where I think the purpose of the story was to get into like his transformation and how he got to this point and stuff.
Right, but obviously the headline always becomes like the throwaway line. Right?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's merit to what he said, but no matter what, if your goal is, this is a guy who just had his option declined. He's not locked into a starting job. Left tackle, I think Dwayne Brown is penciled in as their left tackle. I would be surprised if they did not play Dwayne Brown at left tackle. You don't bring him back unless you plan on playing him. So, it was just an interesting choice by him to criticize the coaching staff as he's in a prove-it year fighting for a job. I don't think that will affect their, if he's the best option at right tackle when training camp starts, which, they're not going to hesitate to put him at right tackle, even if he doesn't like it. If he's the best option, they'll still put him there, even if, he's not happy. I do think, maybe some of it was he didn't have a great relationship with the previous offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, but also Robert Saleh is like the CEO of the coaching staff. Like he was involved with the decision making of putting him at right tackle. Like, I think one of the quotes was like he told them he didn't want to play right tackle or it was a bad idea, and they said stop complaining, or like I forget what the exact quote was from him. But ultimately, if he's highly motivated, that's a good thing. And I never fault guys for speaking their truth, because that's all we want from these guys. We always get mad when these players like tell obvious lies or they talk around things. Like I do appreciate him like speaking from his heart, and I hope he keeps doing that. I like, for his own sake, I just don't know if it's a great idea to talk about your coaching staff like that when you're still on the team. Like maybe you should have waited until he left the Jets to say that, but he clearly wanted to get something off his chest, and he did. And now he has to back it up. Like if we get to training camp and he's not the best option, he's not going to start. And then that story is going to be lingering in people's minds. If he goes on the field and he plays well, then nobody's even going to think about that stuff. So ultimately, if he's playing in week 1, then they're in good shape.
Saleh took the high road for the most part, talking about it when asked about it, basically just praising Becton for all the work he's put in. And that said, quote, he's in the best shape of his life. But then also added that Becton's desire to play left tackle will not impact where the team decides to play him, which is exactly what you just said, which is how it has to be. I mean, that's just facts. All right, I think that's good on Becton. So the news this morning we should get to for the Jets is that they're hosting Matt Ariza for a workout. That name's probably familiar to people, to big NFL fans. Drafted by the Bills, 6th rounder a year ago, 2022, was slotted to be their starting punter. He was released in August, 2 days after a lawsuit was filed accusing him and 2 of his former teammates at San Diego State of rape of a 17-year-old girl. That has now no charges were ever brought. The district attorney in San Diego decided late last year not to press criminal charges. So Ariza has been cleared basically at this point. Still, there's a feel-good spring for the Jets. You have Aaron Rodgers here. You signed a punter. It just seems like a weird move for the Jets to bring in a guy that's going to bring that baggage with him, even to our meeting.
Yeah. I'm not going to throw in any hot takes about a punter. This is obviously one of the more controversial ones you could possibly bring into the building, whatever you think about his situation. They have Thomas Morstead, who they gave a fully guaranteed deal. It's a small deal. It's like a minimum, but it's fully guaranteed, which, you don't want to just throw $1 million away, especially since they don't have a lot of cap space. So maybe it's just sometimes teams bring in guys for workouts so they can, if they need somebody later in the year with an injury or on the practice squad, maybe they're interested in bringing him in to compete with Morstead, but I don't know. The Jets were not the team I expected to be the first workout for him. Maybe they just wanted to see if he's still, I know he came with, I believe he was drafted by the Bills, wasn't he?
Yes, it's a 6th round.
Yeah.
He obviously came
with a huge reputation.
Yeah, came with a huge reputation, big foot. But I don't know if punter is the spot you want to be bringing in a controversial guy. Like I'm not offering an opinion about the guy or anything that happened with that case or anything like that. But I just, Thomas Morstead is a solid veteran punter. He's still good. And I just say just roll with that.
Yeah, and Ariza has, throughout the whole thing, he has said he was innocent of it. And like I
Yeah.
said, no charges were brought. So we'll see how that plays out with that position, if he's just in for a day and then maybe he's a guy they call on later in the season. Certainly interesting to see how that goes. But it definitely got some headlines this morning that it was the Jets. All right. The other major thing I wanted to talk about is Quinnen Williams. You wrote a story a week ago now, Zach?
I think it was a week ago.
Yeah, on Q and the contract situation. He's not at practice, obviously. Like he wasn't going to, the chances of him being at these OTAs, even when we were talking about this when the season ended, were pretty slim. But it sounds now last Monday, he changes his Twitter bio to defensive tackle for ... which clearly is he's sending a message that I'm not happy with where things are going. We didn't expect the deal to be done at this point, I don't think, Zach, but I don't think we expected there to be some negativity like this either.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. On one hand, you understand his frustration. You're seeing all the defensive linemen get deals, and he's still, not getting what he wants necessarily from the Jets. Him and his representation. He's repped by Nicole Lynn, who's one of the bigger agents in the NFL these days. He wants to be paid what he believes he deserves. I just from talking to people, I get the sense that it's like they're not close to an agreement. I think maybe they're close in terms of like money, and I think the money isn't the issue, I would say. But there's something that the Quinnen Williams side is not getting that the Jets aren't offering, and the Jets don't feel in a rush to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if this dragged out closer to training camp. I don't know if he would plan to hold out. I'd be surprised if he held out at training camp, but I don't know. I don't know that for sure. There's mandatory minicamp on the schedule. I'm not 100% sure if they'll like do a full thing or not, just because they have an earlier training camp this year because of the Hall of Fame game. I don't know what the Browns are doing if they're canceling, if they have one.
They finished, I think, June 8th.
Yeah, they and so if the Jets didn't do mandatory minicamp, they'd finish June 9th, I think. So
yeah. Which is like a week earlier than most teams.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that the Jets aren't worried about getting a deal done. I think it's just a matter of when. The Jets are fully comfortable waiting it out, is my impression. Whether that makes Quinnen unhappy, I don't know. Like, I know Jets fans are antsy because of the history of the Jets not re-signing their draft picks. Like, they have a pretty bad history of it. And he was teammates with Jamal Adams and Leonard Williams, and they were both traded before getting to the second contract. And, it's a interesting thing because most teams don't give a guy a second contract because they're not good. The Jets have had a lot of those, but they've also like not kept the good ones around. And Jamal, I know that's not like a criticism of Joe Douglas. Like, you had to do the Jamal Adams trade. That was a ridiculous trade. And, Leonard Williams, they felt like they had Quinnen and they got pretty good value on Leonard, and he wound up getting a lot of money from the Giants. So, but it's just like on paper, they haven't historically resigned him. So I get why fans are antsy. I think the Quinnen Williams side knows that history, which is, maybe why they're annoyed that they're being treated that way or whatever. But the Jets also have Quinnen Williams' rights this year. He's under contract, and then they could franchise tag him next year if they wanted to, and they can franchise tag him the year after that. So the Jets, in theory, have the leverage. I do think it's important to not make your star player unhappy, especially because he's been such a soldier for this team and became a star. He didn't have the star level performance before this last year that he did this last year. So it's not like he probably still has to prove that he can still play at that level in this year. I think that's definitely a thing, but so it's an interesting situation. I don't think anybody should be concerned yet. I think it's May 24th. I think it's too early to be worried about what this means for training camp and the season and stuff like that. I think Quinnen Williams is going to be a Jet this year and for a long time. They just are not at the same place in terms of what both sides want right now.
Now, you mentioned all the other tackles, Daron Payne, Jeffrey Simmons,
Dexter Lawrence,
the 4-year, $90 million. There's a 4-year, $94 million. They're all in the same range. It seems to me, and obviously it's a lot more complicated than I'm stating this, but like, it seems to me the market has sort of been set. You'd have to decide if he gets a little more than those guys or right in that range. But like, I mean, it having all those deals done to me should make this easier, but there's egos at stake and the team trying to save and all that.
And the Jets might have their own wants in terms of what they want out of this contract. Like, maybe Quinnen wants the same deal as the other guys, and maybe the Jets wanted to structure it a little differently. Like there's a lot of factors that go into negotiation. Sometimes it gets hostile. In my story, I use the Deebo Samuel thing as an example. Quinnen Williams has not requested a trade. I don't think he will, but Deebo Samuel requested a trade, and then they signed a contract not long after he requested a trade. Like these things,
and everything's fine now. It's amazing.
Yeah,
once
that's
you
what I'm
sign
saying.
that
Once you get the
paper.
money, everything is fine, and that's why I think Robert Saleh has been emphatic that he is not worried at all. He called him cue ball yesterday, which I've never heard him call him before. But yeah, I would. It's not something to fret about yet. If we get to the beginning of training camp and he doesn't report, like then you have an issue. But I'm not concerned personally.
All right. Do you want to take some questions from the chat?
Yeah,
Zach?
sure.
No, I actually have a question for Zach.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on it when we talked about Aaron Rodgers, but can you do your best Jersey Shore move? Because that was pretty great quote yesterday that Aaron Rodgers was a big Jersey Shore fan.
By the way, so it's funny. I could relate to what he was saying about how his only impression of Jersey was the Jersey Shore. Because when I went to school at University of Arizona, that was when it was like in its initial prime, like the initial run. And I was out west, so nobody was from New Jersey. And so anytime I would tell people I was from New Jersey, they would say like, "Oh, like from the Jersey Shore," like
yeah.
it would make me very mad.
But that was like years ago.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
that
to
was a long
still have
time
that,
ago.
like, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess it came back, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I did look this morning. The Mike the Situation had it posted on his story, the clip of
Oh,
Rodgers.
did he really?
Pauly D had the clip on.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes,
I was curious if they would. Okay, that's well, 'cause
yes, they
he
had
made sure,
several clips
because
posted.
Rodgers made sure to mention that he went to one of Pauly D's parties in Vegas or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just Rodgers is good. Like you can ask him questions a bit like that, and he gives a good answer. Like so to his credit, he's great at the podium, so he's gonna be great for the media. Like that was just started from a question about him, how he's enjoying the state of New Jersey and living here and stuff. And he said all he knew was Teterboro Airport and Jersey Shore before he got here. So
Yeah. All
yeah,
right.
Taylor,
Well,
yeah,
we can get to like a real question.
that was a real question.
We got Boy Green in the chat. Is Corey Davis not being at OTAs yesterday surprising? Anything to read into that?
No, I don't think it was surprising. I think there was a bunch of guys that weren't there. I think he's been at the offseason workouts throughout the offseason. So it seems like he's going to be on the team. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to work out a pay cut like they did with Carl Lawson. I'm not reporting that or anything, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was the next in line to get a pay cut. We actually didn't mention that Carl Lawson took a pretty decent pay cut / restructure to give the Jets like $12 million more in cap space. I get it. Like it was a very like for the team move, like more than most restructures. The restructure is just the guy's actually just getting his money now instead of later. And it's like overhyped as helping the team, but this was an actual pay cut. And I think Carl Lawson is going to have a really good year. Personally, I think, this is sidetracked off a Corey Davis question, but I think Carl Lawson, he was coming off his Achilles last year and he wasn't healthy. He still had 7 sacks and like 20 QB hits. He's going to be completely healthy going into this year. Pretty good supporting cast around him. Like I think he's going to have a big year and then he can get a bigger payday next year, whether it's with the Jets or somewhere else. But yeah, Corey Davis, I personally don't really know what his role is going to be, and he's making a lot of money to be the 4th receiver right now, which he might be, or 3rd. McCole Hardman's also recovering from his injury he still had from last year, so maybe that's why they're keeping Corey around. But I get the impression they're going to keep him, but things can change too. Like if they wanted to make another move or something like that, which I don't know.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of comments in the chat about a wide receiver trade.
Yeah, like I'd be surprised, but not like shocked, because the Jets are all in on trying to surround Aaron Rodgers with the supporting cast. They really thought they were going to get Odell Beckham, and they didn't, and they haven't really gotten anybody since then. So, it wouldn't shock me, but yeah, it would surprise me if they went and made a major trade for a receiver at this point.
This is a fun one. Does Rodgers feel? How does Rodgers feel being in the presence of the legend Chris Trevler?
Great question. He did.
Is Rodgers a team hot coffee or iced coffee guy?
I don't know that.
Those are both from Dan, by the way.
Dan, I'll have to ask Rodgers in the locker room when we get locker room down the line if he's more of a hot or an iced coffee guy.
Okay,
it's got to be. I mean, honestly, he lived in Green Bay for.
True.
It's got to be a hot coffee.
Very
guy.
true.
Or if he is an iced coffee guy, like he's hardcore.
Yeah, but there's nothing like sipping a nice coffee at the Jersey Shore. Maybe it will change his mind.
Yeah, he's around here now. Yeah, it's a great point. With the Chris Traveler, he did mention when he was talking about the QB room, he did mention him by first name. So, him. We got to get Strev on this podcast at some point. I think I'm going to try and make it happen this summer.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but while he's definitely still on the team, would be.
You mean forever?
Wait, did I say that? No,
Yeah.
I didn't say
because I have a little bias towards Tim Boyle. I'm not going to lie.
Right. Good point.
So I don't want to be like,
I think Boyle will be around either way, even if he's on the practice squad.
We should actually talk about that because we talked about this a little bit on Football GM, which is going to air tomorrow. The new rules that came out this week.
Good point.
And
3 QBs,
the 3 QBs, it's almost like a no-brainer for teams to carry 3 QBs on the roster, right? That's how I'm looking at it because they're not going to count
because one
on
doesn't
game
count.
Day.
Well,
right?
I guess they could still technically do practice squad because then you could just
right, but you can't call up. You could call them up.
Yeah,
but the third quarterback cannot be. You can't. They have to be on your active roster.
Oh, is that the rule?
For that rule to apply.
Oh, okay. So then everybody's gonna have 3 quarterbacks then.
Yes. So for that rule that the league meetings just came up with, that you can have a third quarterback dress and only be ready. I don't know the specific wording, but basically play if the first 2 quarterbacks go down, kind of like what happened in the 49ers game. That only applies if that third quarterback is on the active roster, not on the practice squad. So it almost feels inevitable that teams are gonna carry
so
3
basically
guys.
it stems from Purdy, right? Had to come back into the game injured because the backup went on concussion protocols, and that's not something the NFL wants to see, is injured quarterbacks coming back into games.
Right.
But yeah, I think that bodes well for Tim Boyle's chance of making the roster then. If Stravler has a great camp, maybe you can push him, but Boyle has the Rodgers connection. He knows the offense. He knows Hackett. Like, team's pretty locked in that he'd probably be the QB3, and then Stravler can be on the practice squad still. So, that rule, I think, probably got universal support, and it's kind of ridiculous that it wasn't a thing already. And
exactly.
The NFL shot themselves in the foot with that because of the 49ers playoff game against the Eagles was pretty embarrassing, honestly, for the league that even happened. So, I think that was a no-brainer. I know a lot of people are mad about the
flexing.
The flexing and the fair catch one. But the flexing one is more of a fan thing. The fair catching, like, coaches in the league are pretty pissed about, especially special teams.
So what did that new rule specifically say?
You can fair catch it from anywhere and it goes to the 25, I believe.
Yes.
So so if you get a good, like, teams would strategize where they would place a kick so you can't kneel it, and it'd be like, that down in the 10-yard line or within that, and so it's forcing them to try and make a play, and now they can just fair catch it if they're in the corner, and so it removes a lot of the special teams coordinator's ability to strategize, which I'm not as fired up about that rule as maybe some people in the league are, but it's a pretty big change.
Yeah.
Really, the league doesn't want kickoffs, right? It feels like there's just too much violence on a kickoff. I think they've slowly over time changed the rule after rule after rule to kind of dumb it down, I guess. We haven't talked about Quan Alexander. And there is a question in the chat about that. So what's the update? He saw the Steelers last week, right?
Yeah, he visited with the Steelers. As Boy Green pointed out, he had like a rap video that came out where he mentioned something with the Jets in it. So I haven't gotten the vibe that there's anything brewing there. I think the Jets are taking their time, and maybe they're trying to see what they have in this rookie they drafted, Zaire Barnes, and if Jamie and Sherwood could take the next step. I still think they need to bring in a veteran like a Quan or somebody else, but I don't know. It seems weird to me that they wouldn't have signed him already, because unless he's asking for more than people realize, like, I don't see why they wouldn't have signed him already. The fact that he's visiting with another team means that the Jets haven't guaranteed him anything. He wouldn't have met with the Steelers if the Jets had said, hey, we're going to bring you back. We're just going to wait a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe they're waiting until post June 1, and when some stuff happens, I don't know. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he still is on this team in week 1. Like, we get to August and he still hasn't signed with anybody, and they're like, hey, Quan, you want to come in for the minimum? And he's like, sure. But yeah, I haven't heard anything changing anytime soon. So,
based on fan interest, we'll probably do an emergency podcast. If
seriously, fans love them some Quan.
Yeah.
Emma, we miss anything? I think we covered it all.
I believe we hit all the points.
Yes. Who knows? It's the Jets. In 5 minutes, we could have missed something pretty big, but let's hope not.
When are we going to do another one of these? Couple weeks? unless there's breaking news, I think.
Yeah. When's your next?
I love this scheduling the next podcast at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got distracted because I have this Twitter account on alert that tweets out when Taylor Swift tickets become available on resale. And there's one at MetLife that just came available. And
all right, so we better end this podcast.
And I want to get it.
All right. All the Swifties out there.
Yeah.
By the way, and she's originally from Reading, PA, or Wyomissing,
right?
Yeah.
Home of the Reading Phillies.
The show in Philly was 3.5 hours.
Yeah. So I mean, you're paying a lot of money, but it's worth it.
Well, the minimum right now on StubHub,
like
the minimum right now on StubHub is like $2,000. So
wow.
Yeah. So
well, if you go, Zach, you need one of those cool outfits. Because,
oh yeah. I'm got to get like sparkly, get, like heart sunglasses,
a sparkly hat, maybe something like that. Yeah, exactly. Off-season Zach at T.
Glad you support me, Marissa. Thank you.
I love it. Yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining another episode of the Can't Wait podcast. We will be back with you eventually, probably in 2 weeks, I would imagine, as we'll see how the off season rolls along. If you want to join The Athletic, you can do it right now. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait. You can join for $1.99 a month. And then there's another deal, $19.99 for a year for Mother's Day, Father's Day, and graduation. It's theathletic.com/gift sale to get that deal. Either way, we love it if you use Can't Wait because it makes us look good. But either way, we want you to save money as well. We'll talk to everybody again soon. Bye-bye.